before the video starts proper, I should probably just say that this is going to be more of a ranty opinion piece than lore or whatever you're used to from me, so go in with an open mind, I guess. And sorry about the sound quality. I recorded this before I figured out how to make my recordings not sound like shit, so you're gonna have to deal with this for one more video, my bad. Fighting games are a difficult genre to shove meaningful story, character interaction and development into. Even in the modern fighting game, a big subject of criticism they often receive are the ham-fisted ways their story modes can be handled. During the earliest days of fighting games, most devs didn't even bother making a story beyond "it is a fighting tournament." This was the standard set by Street Fighter II and was one that many a game followed, but there was one company that always challenged the notion.
Street Fighter Alpha.
SNK. With titles like Fatal Fury and Art of Fighting, SNK pushed the envelope with what was possible to convey in the genre despite how restrictive it was. Fatal Fury in particular was the first fighting game to motivate the player to continue via presenting a story that connects you with the player character. While there is a fighting tournament in Fatal Fury, the real meat of the story is the grudge between Geese and the protagonists, specifically Terry and Andy. SNK would continue to experiment with making fighting game stories compelling in Art of Fighting, where its plot was essentially its main attraction, telling a classic 80s martial arts movie story condensed into an arcade fighter, as you play as Ryo or Robert fighting their way through the crime world of Southtown to rescue the kidnapped Yuri Sakazaki. While it wasn't always great, and shitty translations would often mire what they were originally going for, SNK pioneered world building, character relationships and lore in the genre. Southtown is probably my favourite fictional location ever, just because of how much rich context it's given across the AOF and Fatal Fury continuities. They really cared about crafting a believable world in these games, and despite the fact that it's rife with crime, it's just such a cozy place. Like, damn, I want to live there. I don't even care if I get mugged. I mean, the only valuable I ever carry on my person is my Neo Geo Pocket, baby!
The graphics will blow you up. Neo Geo Pocket, way ahead of the game.
Now, I'm not going to stand here and act like 90s SNK games are some like high-end peak fiction media that you should play while drinking fucking 100-year-aged wine. I'm just saying that their efforts went a long way to make their characters and locations likable and memorable. Since early arcade fighters are so focused on the minute-to-minute gameplay, I've always admired SNK's ability to convey character personality and development visually. Now, this is something I want to go more into depth in a future video on, but let's just say the small touches and animations express the characters' personalities really well. SNK would often rely on facets outside of the games themselves, like promotional art, to add layers to their characters as well. Showing them in day-to-day life and situations just makes them so much more believable and grounded compared to other companies' FG characters. There's a reason I love SNK characters so much but could never really get into Street Fighter's cast. Like, it's so cool seeing Joe Higashi dressed up to go to a job interview, or Axel Hawk surprising his mum with flowers, or Terry fucking getting his head crushed by Geese's ass. Which is why it totally sucks to see how SNK has been dropping the ball so hard on this kind of thing with their recent titles. Character growth, particularly in the KOF story, is completely stunted, with characters like the Fatal Fury and Art of Fighting cast doomed to forever take a backseat in the story of KOF titles, in favour of other characters getting attention in the arc. Any non-important character will usually just be reduced to running gags or just be completely one-dimensional cardboard cutouts of their previous home series incarnations. Even some KOF originals barely see any growth, I'm assuming out of fear of breaking the status quo, but I say screw that. I'm bored of seeing Yuri and K-Dash to tell everyone to shut up and go away all the time. Like, they've been doing that for 20 years now, give them some agency. Why do Kyo and Yuri still beef like they do? Shouldn't they at least respect or understand each other at this point? Wouldn't it just be so much more engaging to see some growth in their relationship? You know, after 20 years? Character development is hinted at but never properly acted on. Stuff like Tung's pre-battle exchange with the Yuri in KOF 14 means nothing if it's never followed through. You know, Kensu's whole arc with the Spirit Dragon really kind of fizzled out after the Ash saga and didn't really have any interesting payoff. Andy and Maya are apparently an official couple as of KOF 14, but you'd never be able to tell. There's absolutely no maturity in the way they act, it's the same as ever. These weak attempts to develop the characters just always fall flat because no personalities or attitudes change. Things are just arbitrarily changed after years of fan requests to feign proper development. Like, what's the point of making Maya and Andy an official couple if they still bicker the same as ever? It's like if Ryo and King got together but still had the same awkward high school anime tier dialogue they have now. I put 20 on that happening, by the way. Now, why this kind of thing can affect any character in the series, I think this chiefly fucks over the Fatal Fury and Art of Fighting cast. Apart from very few cases such as Yamazaki, the entire rest of the crew gets shafted pretty hard. The team stories on the KOF 15 website just seem to be exasperating the problem, with a lot of them being divisive between the fanbase, and for good reason. While they're okay reads, they've highlighted a problem I've had with King of Fighters for a long while, And I'm sure a lot of you are going to resonate with this. A lot of these stories don't need to be written, because you don't need to provide context for a bunch of glorified cameo appearances. Because, let's be honest, that's what these dudes are in KOF. It's like they're just clocking in for the year, because they don't change apart from extremely incremental stuff. It's like when I clock in at work with the little fingerprint machine and it beeps and it goes, "Thank you," and I sarcastically tell it to go fuck itself. That's basically what Terry is doing every time he rolls up to the next edition of KOF. I literally knew precisely what both of these stories would entail before they even got released. I knew Team Fatal Fury's story would be them dicking around in Pow Pow Cafe, chatting about insignificant shit. And I was right. I knew it would be Terry being high as fuck and Andy disapprovingly shaking his head at Joe Higashi's silly words. And I was totally right. I knew the AOF team story would be Ryo being angry at Hyokugen Ryu barbecue, cussing out his family and then going over to have some awkward anime dialogue with King. And I was right there too. The super heroine story seems to be the most controversial one yet. I saw a lot of discourse about it, and rightfully so. It's one of the worst. Not only is the reasoning for the odd team up completely inconsequential, but the whole thing is basically just Mai and Yuri acting like a pair of white women for 6 paragraphs. Yuri's like my favourite female SNK character, but this shit just makes me want to take her to the side and tell her to shut the fuck up. It's so one-dimensional and annoying in the story that it hurts. Now, I'm not saying my fucking Shiranui is the deepest character SNK has made, but by Christ, she can do better than this. These are characters that have a rich history of established lore in their own franchises, but here in KOF they're given one defining character trait which is then stretched extremely thin for the sake of comedy. Look, obviously not every team is going to be important to the overarching story of KOF, and honestly I don't really want them to be important to it. I mean, I do kind of want it, but I get that you can't rope every single character in such a big roster into a key role. But here's my beef with how the inclusion of AOF and Fatal Fury characters are handled. These are legacy characters, one of them being the literal SNK mascot who are time and again, game after game, made out to look like complete jobbers. They never matter, they never do anything, they just stand in the background like spare cunts at a wedding while watching Kyo and Yuri get closer and closer to practicing homoeroticism every tournament. You have Terry fucking Bogard sitting in the corner twiddling his dick while Ash Crimson shakes his boy pussy in front of the camera. Literally sitting in the corner. Could it be that the recent team stories are metaphors for the role of these characters in the series at large, stuck in a perpetual Groundhog Day loop of reciting the same lines, repeating the same gags and never changing their characteristics? Or maybe they're just in the game so they can be slapped on the cover art. Oh wait, they're not even on the box! Guys, they put Terry in Smash Brothers. That's like 4 million normies that know what a Terry Bogard is now. You should put him everywhere. You think this is gonna push units? Bam! And also put in Sans money. I kinda lost direction. What was I talking about? Oh yeah, World Heroes is an obscure 1992... Wait, no. What I'm saying is that these characters have just floundered around every King of Fighters game, mucking around and doing silly jokes. I mean, the art of fighting characters get parodied so much that they're a hop, skip and a jump away from circling around to being as much of a joke as Dan Hibiki. Hey, does anyone remember when this guy was the winner of the first ever KOF tournament? You know, the Invincible Dragon? Beat the shit out of Geese Howard so hard he became a weeaboo shortly after? No? Just me? Okay. And you know, these things aren't really bad on paper. Like, some of the gags are pretty outdated, like Joe always being cockblocked by a dude that looks like a lady, but stuff like Takuma obsessively trying to get Ryo and King to deflower each other, and the whole Kyokugen Ryu family opening up a fucking barbecue restaurant that leads them to completely disregarding their training, leaving Ryo blue-balled as hell, is genuinely funny stuff. Like, AOF team's ending in 14 is probably my favourite team ending in the series. It's actually great. So why am I complaining about this? Well, there's one massive problem. And that's the simple fact that this is the only content we're getting of these iconic characters anymore. Bear in mind what these characters used to be. Terry was a revenge-driven hero who gradually opened up more to the world around him upon realizing he was blinded by vengeance. Now, in KOF, he's funny shouty man. He scream, he shout, bust a wolf. More on that in a future Terry video. Now, considering Terry's arc is pretty much over by the time of KOF and canon, I can't really bitch too much about his depiction in these games. For the most part, he's still taken pretty seriously. However, that doesn't change the fact that he's never had an important role in the series ever since its inception. I thought this teaser in 14 was gearing Terry up for a bigger role in 15, but nope. So far there's no indication that he's doing anything more than usual, which is basically nothing. Honestly, Yamazaki has had more prominence in KOF than Terry. Even Kim has more going on most of the time. But like I said, Terry got let off pretty well compared to some of his peers. Andy and Mai on the other hand got hit a little harder compared to him. Their entire roles in KOF are to just have gag exchanges. And I want to point out before anyone thinks I don't like fun that these gags are also genuinely funny. Like the baby puppet and the subsequent baby doll. You know, which Andy seemingly believes for a second. Guess the man isn't as much as a virgin as we thought. However, these are just gags. They aren't moving the characters forward in any meaningful way. Their chemistry is exactly the same in 2021 as it was in 1994. Even after being made a couple, it just doesn't make sense to me. I know some people like how these characters are and prefer them not being changed much over time, but come on, are you not bored of this? We can have fleshed out character evolution without deviating from their core values. Another character who's defamed a lot is Joe. In Fatal Fury, he was goofy but very capable and strong. He talked shit and could own up to it. His confidence coming from the harsh, dedicated training and extreme disciplines he put himself under in the Thai jungles. He's so strong by the time of Fatal Fury series that he chose not to take himself so seriously, and I think that's a really fun concept in a genre with so many uptight, serious Shoto McShoto-sons who only care for training and discipline. It's fun imagining how he used to be a super serious Andy Ryu type, but is now a goofball who still manages to prove that he's not someone to be fucked with. In KOF, he's a joke character. He gets his ass out and pretends to be an action movie star. In the Capcom vs SNK titles, he's paired up with Dan. Do I really need to say anything more? Joe was the comedy relief of Fatal Fury, yes, but he was still a badass underneath. Now he's just another silly character in a series already filled with a bunch of silly characters. It really seems like every interesting thing about a character in their home series is just something to be played for laughs in KOF. It almost feels like SNK isn't even respecting the characters that pretty much built the company. Speaking of, the characters who get the absolute worst of it are the Art of Fighting characters. I'm sure I don't really need to go too in depth here. They are literally just a joke team. All their endings are gag reels. Ever since KOF 94, seriously. The gag changes, yeah, but it's still a gag. And I'd be able to swallow Team AOF be a total joke in KOF if I also had an AOF game on the side where Ryo is Mr. Karate 2 and absolutely fucking wrecking shit up like we all know he can. Perhaps with King by his side after finally moving past their stupid teenage romance bullshit, I don't know. But we're not getting that. This is the thing. We only get to see Ryo put up with his kooky family and silly team endings and pre-battle dialogues now. There hasn't been a new Art of Fighting game since 3 in 1996. But okay, I get it, not crazy demand for that, but come on, you don't need the series to continue building on the lore of the characters, because Fatal Fury shares the exact same continuity. Simple solution here, just fucking stick the two together and it ends up being better than the sum of its parts. See? I mean, obviously that's a joke. You keep the name Fatal Fury because of brand recognition, but now it includes AOF characters. Who wouldn't want that? Pretty much, the point I'm trying to make overall is that with KOF mostly being focused on its own original characters first and foremost, these legacy characters could really do with their own franchises being rejuvenated so they get some more room to stretch out in. They can't realistically thrive in KOF because they aren't the main stars. There's little being done to ever change them, and what is done seems like a half effort, like the Andy and my example I gave earlier. Having Fatal Fury and Art of Fighting characters show up in KOF is awesome. Don't get me wrong, but it doesn't even come close to satisfying my desires to see them in starring roles again. I mean shit, Terry Bogard hasn't been a main character since 1999, and even then he was second fiddle to Rock. This is the guy they chose to put in Smash, mind you. Look, this has been a hell of a video to put together. I don't really know if I explained myself well, or if I came across as too much of a whiny bitch. I just care about these characters, and I want more for them than what they're currently being given. I just feel like they deserve more respect than just being a background jape. There's tons of fans who can't get super into the gameplay of SNK titles and instead immerse themselves through studying the characters and lore instead. Don't those fans deserve to be thrown a bone as well? I'm sorry this video probably wasn't super funny or anything, but this topic has just been on the tip of my tongue for a while. But you know, it's important to always look on the bright side. At least I'm not a Darkstalkers fan.